Another beautiful Sunday afternoon. This is Robin Minds. Welcome. My name is Ebuka Obiuchendo. Thanks a lot for joining us. Yes, Nigeria celebrated 60 years of its independence in the past week, and a lot of people, sort of took it as a moment to reflect on our nationhood and a lot of the things that might be going not so well. But in the last couple of hours, something else has popped up. And I've done this show for, I think, about going on 8 years now, and I know that I talk a lot about things that I've repeatedly spoken on this show, kidnappings, terrorism. But I think the one that completely shocks me every time is, the issue with SARS, the Special Anti-Robbery Squad, mostly because it's a government agency and we should be at a point now where they should have regulated themselves enough to be doing the right thing. And we're there again. A young man we hear was allegedly shot dead in Ogeli yesterday, and there also talks about something else happening somewhere in Abuja as well. And of course, the hashtag has taken over social media, talking about the SARS being disbanded, the hashtag EndSARS, which a lot of Nigerians have been conversant with for the last 3 years. But in the last couple of minutes, the Nigerian police handle officially tweeted the following: all SARS, STS, IRT, and other tactical police squads operating at federal, zonal, and command levels are hereby banned from carrying out routine patrols and other conventional low-risk duties. Stop and search duties, checkpoints, roadblocks, traffic checks, etc., with immediate effect. I'm joined here by Sandra Ezekwesili. We have a lot to talk about. Thanks for being here today. First of all, you see the tweets, they're talking about no more searching of mobile phones, laptops, and smart devices. They are now meant to concentrate solely on cases of armed robberies, kidnapping, and other violent crimes, which is what they're set up to do. Do you believe that?
Do I believe that this is going to end? No, I do not. This is not the first time. This is not the first outcry. This is not the first EndSARS campaign. In fact, we had an EndSARS campaign that looked like it yielded results sometime 2 years ago, I think, or 2 or 3 years ago, when we had Professor Osinbajo come out and announce a lot of reforms and said they were having conversations, and all of these things were supposed to lead to an end of the brutality that Nigerians are suffering at the hands of SARS. So this is one more lip service that is being paid to this particular problem. I don't think that this time around anything different will happen. And so you have a lot of Nigerians who are saying, for instance, disband them instead of taking them off of the streets, disband SARS. And I was having a conversation this morning and I said, disbanding SARS isn't the answer. Disbanding SARS means that those officers are going to go into other places, still in the system. They're still in the system. So what we need is a reformation of our policing system. We have a policing system that we inherited from the colonial masters, a police system that was created to occupy and oppress. We have police officers today who were not alive in 1960 or 1970, who were not a part of the policing system of the 60s or the 70s, and yet they've inherited the occupy and oppress mentality instead of the protect and serve mentality. Ebuka, on my way here today, I was asking myself, do I wear a wig or do I carry my locks? But okay, well, you're kind of lucky because SARS really doesn't stop women from wearing locks. But then I was also thinking about the fact that if SARS does stop me, I could go to jail, be raped, and killed. For the men, you go to jail and killed. For me, I will suffer the indignity of being raped first and then killed. And yet we're having conversations about, let's get them off the streets, and that's the answer. A conversation that we've had again and again and again. I think we know that this will not work, and I think we should keep the heat. We should keep our feet on the necks of government until government does more than say, take them off of the streets, because that's not the answer.
Why do you think it's taking government so long? Because I understand a lot of people have said, yes, disband, but I also get your argument, disbanding doesn't necessarily solve everything. This might also be a welcome development to get them off the streets for starters. But like I said, the first hashtag probably started, I think, 2017 or thereabout, if I'm not sure. This is about 3 years. We did have Vice President Osinbajo come out and speak up one time but it hasn't stopped anything. Why do you think government hasn't been proactive enough with this issue?
Because we have actors in government who need the dysfunction. You have elections happen, for instance, and there are reports that often emerge of some of these operatives being the ones that are used to carry out violence, to rig the elections. So some of these people are in the employ of some government officials, right? Now, these are not my words. These are reports that you have journalists getting from the field in the course of doing their work. And so if there's no political will to put a stop to Nigerians dying every day, you have to ask yourself, who's benefiting from this? Whose interests are being protected by a system that continues to kill young Nigerians?
So you're talking about end SARS and reform SARS. The debates for a lot of Nigerians, they want it ended. They want it disbanded. I don't know what's going to happen to the officials, like you've said. The reform side, how does the reform then work? It looks like a very long-term plan. But in the short term, what should be done?
In the short term, I think what we need to do is get a bit more forceful with enforcing less brutal interface with policing. So when people are interacting with the police, when the people are talking with the police, when the people are meeting the police interaction shouldn't end with the brutality that it often does. And the police hierarchy needs to get more serious about enforcing punishment for police officers who do this. If you dismiss them from service, if you jail them, if you know, after they go to court and they're found guilty, and you jail them, if they have to pay heavy fines, perhaps, maybe we don't get as many reports as we are getting. And while that is happening, you are simultaneously training and retraining these people about how policing is done in 2020. Because, Ebuka, Nigeria's education is abysmal. And a lot of the police officers we have today went through the Nigerian education system. And you have a situation where a lot of these police officers that we are interacting with every day, we're interfacing with every day, do not know better. And if you do not train them to know better, I've spoken, for instance, with the PRO of the police, both federal and state. I've spoken with commissioners of police on my show. And when you have them on, they tell you about all the different kinds of trainings that they make the police go through. You know, they train them, you know, things like forensics, they make them go through psychiatric evaluation. But you interact with the average policeman on the street and you don't get the sense that this person is well trained. So perhaps we need to go back to that while we are enforcing strict punishments for police officers who err. I'm not saying that they all err, but for those ones that err, punish them. Let that serve as a deterrent to the police officers who may want to err in the future. If we continue to reward bad behavior with zero punishment, young Nigerians will continue to get killed for just existing.
There's a constant debate that's gone on for years now about state policing. And I know one of the statements that were put out by the tweets talked about, you know, putting more responsibility with the state commissioners of police, you know, to make sure that this new guideline is enforced with regards to banning them from the roads. Is this something we should start looking at? Is the federal system of our policing working?
It's obviously
because
not.
There's too much of a burden, it looks like, on the Inspector General of Police, which is why every other year we hear that roadblocks are banned, but the roadblocks don't go anywhere because nobody seems to be close enough to the monitoring to make sure that these things happen. How are we sure this is now going to work when the center in Abuja seems to be saying something, but we don't know what's going to happen in Oworoshoki tomorrow or in Aba the next day? How do we start, you know, having that conversation to say, okay, we need to decentralize this thing a little more?
We're already having that conversation. We've been having that conversation for a long time. Community policing is something that needs to happen. Whether or not the states will be able to handle it is a different conversation entirely.
Which is the fear for a lot of people.
Yes, but that's a different conversation entirely. But does community policing need to happen? Yes, it does. We need to have police officers who know the communities. We need to have people in the police who are from those communities. That's how it happens in different parts of the world. In the 21st century, you cannot have a police officer who sees somebody in the neighborhood and doesn't know that this person shouldn't be in this neighborhood. That's what it's about. And so I was glad when there was an announcement about recruitment of police constables, and there were plans to make that happen. And, there were plans for training, and then there was the big conversation about whether they will be paid or they will not be paid. All of those things are conversations that need to happen because, of course, you do need community policemen and women, and you do need to pay them. And if you're not going to be paying them, we do hope that you're not going to be arming them, because you have somebody doing the very difficult job of policing a community, and then you give them arms, and then you don't pay them, or you don't pay them sufficiently, or you don't pay them consistently. And what you have is somebody who is a willing tool in the hands of the quote-unquote devil. So this person says, well, government no dey pay me, I got make money somehow, I get gone, make a fine way where we take make money. Do we need community police? Yes. Is that the answer to a lot of community security challenges? Yes. Are we ready to do it right this minute? That's a conversation I'm going to leave for the policy analysts and the policy makers to answer.
So it makes me wonder, how do we enforce this now? And how do we hold, because there's a lot of anger right now. If you go on social media, if you're having conversations with what's happened in the past couple of days, or in the last couple of hours even, there's a lot of anger, a lot of famous people are speaking up even and, just damning the consequences, because it's like enough. At this point, it's enough. I'm even hearing whispers about protests, being planned and all of that. How do we hold people responsible now? Because we hear constantly the commissioners of police are not necessarily answerable completely to the state governors. They are still answerable to the center in Abuja. How do we hold these commissioners responsible? Do we all march to Abuja to hold people responsible? It always makes it's a little confusing as to who do we ask for answers.
So the chief security officer of every state is the governor of the state. And if as a governor of a state, your citizens are dying and dying unavoidably, it is your job to find a solution to that problem. We don't care how you do it, just do it. If it means that you have meetings with the IGP and the president and you sit with them in a room until they find answers to that particular problem, you do it, because it's your job as the chief security officer of your state to protect the lives and property of citizens of your state. And so where the pressure starts is with the governor of each of those states where we have police violence. Now, while you're pressuring the governor, you're also pressuring the person that you've elected to represent you. So you have different House of Assembly areas, right? Constituents, right? And you have the people who are representing you in those different constituencies, House of Assembly, House of Reps. How about you give them a call? How about you get them to speak on this issue? How about you pressure them to pressure the governor, to pressure the IGP of police, who, finds a way to end this problem? But the thing is, we don't know how to sustain our anger. We get angry and we move on. We're very quick to move on. Our anger is very fleeting. It's a good thing, except that we're dying. So perhaps this is time to get angry, stay angry until we get results. And the results do not look like they are banned from patrol. That's not a good enough result. They're banned from patrol. We've heard that before. We're going to hear it again because they're going to come back onto the streets to patrol, and we're going to have more killings happen, and then we're going to trend another hashtag, and then they're going to ban them yet again.
Well, we're joined now by Timi Olagunju via Skype, who's a public affairs analyst. Timi, if you can hear me, we're having this conversation because, if you're in Nigeria, you definitely know what's going on right now. End SARS versus reform SARS. There seems to be a bit of a debate as to what should be done at this moment. There seems to be an overwhelming support for ending it completely, though. What's your take on this?
The support for ending it is in good shape, policy-wise. When we forget history, we are doomed to repeat the same. And so the challenge that we've had was the possibility for a reform, which happened some few months ago thereabout, when the acting president, the vice president, in the absence of the president, tried to impute some reforms as at that time. But look where it has brought us to. right? So it is quite evident from the historical policy framework going forward that we need to end SARS. Let's take the statistics. We say that SARS basically is an anti-robbery squad. Now, how many robbery issues have that particular unit dealt with? Is there any other body that can do the same job that SARS is doing? Is SARS supposed to extend the duties of anti-robbery into electronic fraud? These are clear issues of concern, and frankly speaking, the current framework of the SARS, as it were, calls for a complete annulment, a complete end of the department within the police, and the reconstitution of something entirely different, as it were.
So the question now is, like Sandra had mentioned earlier, so you end SARS, but the officers are actually the problem, not the SARS body itself. Because, I mean, it's human beings who make up SARS. So you end SARS, the personnel still are in the system. What's the guarantee that they don't continue doing this in some other form? So how do we go about that conversation, I guess, is the question.
Yeah, that's a very key question. However, because of the fact that the system in itself is made up of the people, right? And those people that constitute the SARS have kind of exercised that power extremely different from others. For example, SARS officials hardly wear uniforms when they harass you. They harass with such impunity that the policy framework allows them to operate in such clandestine approach. And so the fact about the redistribution of police officers who are in SARS and making them become like regular police officers first, and that is after they've done a proper scrutiny of those who are fit, both intellectually, mentally, and psychologically, to be reintegrated into the police force. Now, that clears out that air of mystery and brings in some level of transparency, because now they have to wear uniforms like the regular police force, and they have to do things like the regular police force. After that is done, dealing with the foundation, because in this case, the foundation is destroyed. There is nothing the makeup artist can do, right, than put a powdered approach. So reforming SARS at its way is a powdered approach. But ending SARS and taking these police officers and making them operate like regular police officers, from which we can then start to frame something that can work in that context, is the way forward. And remember, the history of SARS itself, the history of SARS was that SARS started up in Lagos during the times of certain robbery squads that were happening across, Lagos as it was at that time. And the operation was basically anti-robbery before it was then further adopted into the federal system, as it were. So, consequently speaking, we need to go back to the drawing board.
So just very quickly in one sentence, like I said, the police just tweeted that they've been banned from the streets with immediate effect. Do you think that's going to help? Very quickly.
Well, the truth about it is no. You see, the fact that they have been banned is, well, maybe a policy step. However, the people are calling for a complete end to SARS and everything that so constitutes that body. And the reason is simple. You see, telling this particular frame that has taken is a policy action, but it is not a policy action that hits to the root of the matter, right? Because hitting to the root of the matter would also mean that there is need for justice for those parties involved or affected by the activities, the nefarious activities of SARS members, some level of accountability in trying to look through those who have turned SARS into a money-making machine and bringing them to book. That is the way forward.
Thank you very much, Timi. Sandra, very quickly now. Do you think it's going to be a different outcome this time because the anger seems different?
I hope that there will be a different outcome. I doubt that there will be a different outcome, but the different outcome happens if we keep our foot on the necks of the people whose hands it is in to change this. If we keep the pressure on, perhaps we'll have a different outcome. If we get tired after a few days, we're going to be here for a while.
Thank you very much, Sandra. Thank you very much, Timi, for joining us. It's a very heavy conversation to be had, but it has to keep going on. And hopefully, like you say, we don't stop with the pressure. Please don't go. We'll be right back.